In addition to being an integral factor in any backgrounding program, efficient weaning is considered one of the most important steps in beef production generally, as it allows cows to get back into condition and focus their energy on their next calf. There are a number of accepted methods of weaning practiced in Australia, but yard weaning is regarded as ideal because it introduces calves to hand feeding, encourages group socialisation, and tends to result in quieter cattle that are easier to handle. Yard weaning is less stressful than other methods and is a good way to sort out cattle that won't settle down and are therefore unsuitable for lot feeding.
All good cattlemen should be yard weaning as a general rule, regardless of whether they take those cattle through to feedlots themselves. But handling the cattle, getting them used to introduced feed, and trying to handle them in a low stock stress sort of manner, whether it's tailing cattle out or whether it's working cattle through cattle yards, but getting them familiar with flight zones and getting them familiar with pressures that they may come in contact with people, and to do that in a relaxed manner.
The success of a feedlot is often driven by what happens to the cattle, what has happened to cattle prior to their arrival at the feed yard. And cattle producers can play a huge role here, and the role can happen in a few ways. Firstly, the research has shown, the latest MLA research has shown that yard weaning, once again, is the key to driving health and performance. And this yard weaning socialises cattle, gets them used to a confinement to some degree, and also teaches them some basic manners and some basic handling skills. So yard weaning is paramount.
The journey to the feedlot really starts with selecting the right genetics, but that's when the really important things begin. And one of those is having cattle that have been properly yard weaned. Yard weaning is distinctly different from simply taking a calf away from its mother in a paddock. It's about spending time. It's about probably 2 weeks of time spent in a yard where a number of things are done with those animals. It's very important for an animal when they move away from a lifetime, albeit short, spent purely with their mother, to the opportunity to then interact with people and vehicles and other animals. And that really makes their life so much simpler, and once they get into the feedlot environment. So yard weaning and all of those little nuances that they are going to encounter once they arrive in a feedlot, it's so important that they become comfortable with those, that they become very quiet, so that once they're in a feedlot environment, the trucks are moving and the horses, they're simply very comfortable with it. It means their performance is better, it means their health and welfare is better, and therefore you've got an animal that will perform very well in the feedlot.
Ideally, we'd like all of our cattle to be yard weaned and have access to good feed and water during the weaning process, handled well, get used to horses, get used to people, get used to hand feeding, and then release back out in the paddock. If cattle aren't weaned properly or backgrounded correctly, there's huge impact on our bottom line when we close the cattle out. We do need to ensure that cattle are well weaned, well vaccinated, and correctly grown out to our market.
These little cattle that that we've got in the yards here today have come from sort of southern to central New South Wales with not a lot of handle. Basically, I think they were weaned onto a truck and they arrived here. So when we first brought these cattle through the yards, they didn't want to lead through a set of yards. They didn't know how to walk through a gateway even. And the same in the paddock, like they didn't have a lot of handling prior to them getting here. So we've had to do a bit of work with them in the last couple of weeks, but it's going to be an ongoing thing with these cattle. Like just because they have one good experience, it doesn't mean that's going to outweigh the three bad ones prior to that.
Chris Donoghue is a practitioner and teacher of calm handling techniques who believes cattle must be taught how to cope with pressure in order to minimise their stress levels. In his role providing contract weaning services to expansive cattle enterprises, he's been able to put his methods into practice. In this demonstration, a mob of just weaned calves is being trained to go through the yards and up the race. The cattle are unsettled after an overnight storm and have had minimal experience in the yards, but with calm handling, they're soon learning to cope with a stressful situation. This type of training can be beneficial when transitioning cattle from a grass-fed environment to a more intensive ration during backgrounding.
So if I want to move these little animals, you come in, you open your gate, you just poke a little hole in, get a little bit of movement and back out to guide them. That actually slowed them. You want more movement, poke in again, got a little run, and come out and guide them. Position is control. It's not the hooping and the hollering or the waving and the jumping. Find the spot you need to be and then just do what you need to do to get whatever you want done. It's simple stuff. They've only been around here, been through here drafted and then down here once. A bit of weather on them, a bit of moisture on them, they're going to be a little bit more lively than they were yesterday. That's just weather, that's nature. They've already showed that going in there. Normally they just come up nice, they're a little bit surgy. Yes. The weather's done that. So we go into a feedlot or any environment with cattle, all this changes all the time. The elements change, gets hot, gets cold. Get rain on them, they're different. Yep. Definitely different. So now, there'll be more of a chance of having to slow them down, I would think. They've already told me they're going to be a bit quick by just going in and getting them up. Yep. So you don't go down the back and chase them all up because they've told us they're going to come quick. So there's going to be more chance you're going to be needed up front here to slow them down. And I don't go down behind cattle anyway. Everything I work cattle is predominantly from the front. But there's three things I want in cattle is one, they come to me, go past me, and then I've got to be able to drive them off. But it's always from that back corner, never behind. That back corner. You're always on the lead corner, side, back corner. So now we're on the front corner, but when the last of them going through, I'll be on the back corner. We always want recognition. You know, if you're talking to somebody, you want eye contact. If you're working a dog, you want eye contact. If you're working cattle, you want eye contact. You can't see their eyes, they can't see you. And once you've got attention forward, you can just control them and hold them and keep them wanting to come forward. Let him come forward. Try and stop him. Don't let him come forward. Stop you. Now let her come forward. I'm going to stop that one. Now I'm going to let, oh, it's a little girl, let her come forward. And I don't want cattle jamming up in there. I'd sooner thin them down here than hitting up the race there and hitting hard. But if they do get up in there, well, it's out of my control then. But I've got to do the most I can here to set it up so they don't go smashing themselves up there. And that is tune in. Look at the eyes, tune in. I'm getting not too happy, slow them down a bit. But I don't want to turn him back. I want him to think this way, back off him and let him keep thinking this way. And slow him down a bit. Slow him down a little bit. But I want to keep thinking this way, then let it go. I don't want him turning back, turn him back. Just catch him, hold him, and that's turn that one back. But he's still thinking this way. We've slowly got most of those cattle, and these only weaners that are weaned 2 days ago, thinking forward. Now I've turned it back. That one animal turned back has stopped the whole show. But it's not the end of the world. The world keeps spinning round. We just go looking for a hatful more. Maybe. So this movement here slows them and pulls them forward and slows. Catch his little eye, let him come. I want to slow him down again, I move forward. I want him to come, I go this way. One move that way made it nearly come. Move this way, slows him down. Move this way, oh, going to turn it back. Little sensitive girl, it's okay. Little baby. And she's still got to come out and come past. They've all got to come up and come past, go off.